For my colonial occupation, I chose a cabinet maker. Cabinet makers originated from the United Kingdom around the 1700s. When European settlers arrived in America, they brought chests and small boxes as their furniture. The 17th century style reflects the transmission into the New World of late medieval and Renaissance traditions by immigrant craftsmen. Cabinet makers would build, repair, and install wooden cabinets, chairs, and tables. The tools they would use were saws, planes, drills, and chisels. For the wood, they would use beech, walnut, and oak trees. The nails weren't great, but they were good enough to keep the projects together. The hammer was put together with wood as the handle and iron as the head. Building these cabinets would allow you to put small belongings in them to where they would not get lost. Chairs and tables would allow you to have guests over and allow you to sit down. Having a table allows you to do a lot of things, like do your work for a business, eat, play games with like your family, and just having a table allows you to do a lot of things like homework, eat, you could play games, you could have celebrations like birthdays or family dinners. The steps that would go into cabinet making is finding your own wood and finding the correct measurements. The other step is to sand and finish your wood. Step 3 would be to clean, stain, and paint wood with a clear finish. The third step would be to clean, stain, and paint with a clear finish. The fourth step would be to get your hardware you would need to put the project together. The final step would be to assemble your project. Cabinet makers would go out and find the wood that they would think would be the correct match. Cabinet makers would go out and get the wood they need and cut it to the correct. Cabinet makers would go out and get the wood that they would need and cut it to the correct length. Then they would get a plane, and a plane was like a sander back then, and they would just use it to make both of the sides nice and smooth. Cabinet makers would use thin nails. They weren't that great because they were super thin, but they would still allow the projects to hold together for a good amount of time. When putting these projects together, they used thin nails, and they weren't that good because of how thin they were, but they were good enough to last the project a little while. The hammer, it was made out of a wood handle, and then the top was made out of an iron. Cabinet makers, once they were ready, once they were ready to put their projects together, they would set them up, then get their hammer hammering. Once you got all your screws and stuff, and this is what it should look like. Cabinet makers would struggle with finding good wood that would let them have good products. The tools they had to work with was also a struggle because they didn't know how to like make a good tool that would last them a long time, and so they kept having to remake those tools.